going to look back at 2022 as it pertains to MMA? As it pertains to the feelings and the emotions and the matchups that we had? How are we going to look back on it? Because, guys, something is happening right in front of our eyes. And if you want to learn the business, you want to try to get into the minds of the guys on the second floor at the UFC so you can attempt to manipulate those minds, steer your own career with it, this is a great time to study, because something is happening right now that's very different. And nobody's observed it, let alone looking into it. I will be bringing it to your attention right now. But I will share with you, if you grab Dana White in 2001, when he had a vision to start this organization, the mindset that he had and what he was positive he needed, and put that with Dana White of 2022, they would be in disagreement with each other. Let me give you an example. The fights that we're getting, the ratings that we're doing, the sellout audience, the buzz around MMA is as strong as it's ever been. But 2001 Dana White would have been very clear to tell you there is no business here unless I have stars. I can have a roster that's light. I've got to have stars in my main event. Championship matches, household names. Dana would have been right. For 21 years, that was absolutely what he needed. But we're in a different phase right now, and it's got to be studied. You got to understand what's happening to start to break down why. There is something strategic going on within the UFC. I haven't put my finger on it, guys. I can only tell you the 10 biggest stars that Dana has, exactly what he would have told his future self he must have. They're on ice. They're sitting on ice right now. Both Diaz boys, make no mistake, Nick still draws. George Masvidal, Colby Covington, Conor McGregor, Dustin Poirier, Jon Jones, Stipe, Francis, these guys are on ice. Chimaev. And they're not in a hurry to get them to the market. And we see this with colleges. We see this with other professional sports leagues often. They have what's called a rebuilding phase. And they will take time and they will take investment and they will start to build another crop. That's just not what's happening here. That is happening advertently. That is not the overarching goal. There's a certain amount of dates, certain amount of guys under contract, certain obligations that you have. You start spreading it around. But when you have a time within the sport, which is a star-driven industry, and you have your 10 most popular household names, right? Because you need a few things to have a big fight. You got to have name recognition. You must have a story. Those two things together are going to create or fail to create an emotion. If you have those three things, you've got a fight. You have something big that you can count on. And we're just seeing a different time. Something else is happening now. We're having new champions come in. There was a day in the sport where if you had a new champion, and it happened all the time. I mean, right when we think we've caught fire with somebody. Vince McMahon himself, when he looked at buying the UFC, he was going to buy it and shut it down. He's just going to get it off of pay-per-view, by the way. But he openly said, you cannot have a star unless you control the outcome. It's why the UFC will never work. That's a quote. He was wrong. But you know what, guys? When he said it, we believed him. We thought he was right. We thought we do need a guy that can keep that belt for a period of time. We do need that guy that becomes the champion. I mean, we were playing such musical chairs within the UFC that when Stipe Miocic defended the heavyweight championship twice, it became a record. I had no idea. I had no idea the belt was jumping around that quickly, that 2 defenses became a record. I believe Stipe ended up with 3, which is a record that still sits to this time. I'm sure you'll correct me down below. But I think that's right. And the only point being, what everybody believed we needed, what 2001 Dana White would have advised 2022 self is not what we're living in right now. There is not this massive hurry. The guys and the stories and the skills and the sport, you, the media, the community as a whole has put this industry in a very different spot. And I'm only asking, how's it going to be remembered? Because a lot of the matches that are coming up lack the one thing that the business needs. The business, to make money. To make money, you don't need good fights. That's what we come tell you guys. You have to have one thing, and one thing, there is one thing that keeps the financial side of this business going, which is anticipation. If you do not have anticipation, you have not, I don't give a goddamn how good the fight is. I'm tired of hearing that, quite frankly, because I'm tired of hearing the ignorance. I know that gets presented to you guys. I don't have a problem with that. What I have a problem is when you believe it, and then you try to send it back. Fight of the night, knockout of the year, all of these things, right? But you can't make any money on that. I'm having a different conversation. When the fight's already over, you can't make any money. You got to have it ahead of time, which you only get one, which is through anticipation. This year, in comparison to other years, does lack anticipation. That's true, but it does not lack incredible matches. Find an example. We were starting to do the champ business. Right when we were starting to cross guys over and bring them from different weight classes, there was a dream fight that you, the community, wanted to see. This was living on something called the Underground Forum, which was a massive driver of our entire industry. The fight that you guys wanted to see, the dream fight that you were trying to put together and you were campaigning and lobbying for, was Dominic Cruz versus Demetrius Johnson. The reason that's interesting is that fight had already happened, but you didn't know it. Demetrius was not Demetrius at the time. Dominic was not Dominic at the time. They fought about a year. They fought about 20 months. Too early. It was just one of those things where when you look back and you look at that fight, which I'm just going to use as my example, oh my goodness. It got labeled a dream fight later, now, currently. More than a super fight. It was a dream. It was your wish. And there are a lot of those matches going on right now. I agree. Doesn't have the same anticipation. Your biggest heavyweight stars, Francis, regardless of what's happening, Jones, regardless of what's happening, Stipe, regardless of what's happening, the fact that they're on ice and not trying to be pulled in, the fact that Conor McGregor is out, we don't know when he's returning. We're very open and excited about the idea. But we are not drooling at the mouth. We are not sweating because we don't know if that's going to be until 2023 or if that can go on the books in Q4 of this year. It's one of those things that 2001 Dana White would not have told himself. He wouldn't have. Very different mindsets. We're living a very different time. 2022, to answer my own question, is going to be remembered extremely fondly, but for different reasons. And it is going to come down to the action. It is going to come down to what we saw. It is going to come down to the rankings. Look, we got 3 new guys that have entered the rankings in the last week. I got Figzayev, Rakhmonov, and then another thing, you don't ever want to number yourself when you're filming live, because if you can't think of the third one, you're going to look like a fool. But these are still new guys. These are still new names that you didn't have before. I argue for you, there is a rebuilding going on right now. And I don't know if that was the goal and the strategy or if it's just a byproduct, but it's happening. To learn the fight business, guys, the only way you can do it on the cheap is this. Study things, listen to it, think. That's how you learn. There's 5 men alive that could survive in the world of promotion. When I say men, I mean human. There's 5 humans. They had a drive, they had an interest, maybe they were born with a little bit of a skill, maybe. And then they got their education through getting their ass kicked. There's no college in all of the lands you can go to and major in fight promotion. There's no book in any library that you can check out on fight promotion. You got to believe it. You got to jump in. And when you start taking those lumps, you got to chalk that up to the price of an education. You got to learn from it. I'm only sharing that because something very fascinating is happening right now. I'm the smartest guy in the room and I don't have it figured out. But I'm observing it. I'm looking at it. I'll have it by this time next year. It'll be very obvious to me. But it's happening now. I want to know right now. I want to know right now why we are not in a rush to book our 10 biggest, most monetizing box office draws. And I will only remind you, and it's my premise, and it'll also be my final thought. There has never been a time in our sport, there has never been a year when we weren't in that rush, where we did not have an urgency, where we weren't bending over backwards to do just that. 2022 is very different. Why? How did we get here? And why is it working? You start to figure those things out, you will start to be one of the smarter and better minds in MMA.